It comes from the Pearl of Great Price in the history of Joseph Smith, and it's part of their canon. It's part of their doctrine. This is the official story. In 1820, when Joseph Smith was a 14-year-old boy, there was no small stir, quote, among the people of his community who were debating which church was true. Joseph himself described it as a time of religious revival where, quote, Methodists, Presbyterians, and Baptists were, quote, in the midst of a war and tumult of opinions. Joseph wrote that, quote, I often ask myself, what is to be done? All right? After reading a powerful passage in James 1:5, he retired to a grove of trees to pray. While in prayer, he says he was overcome by a dark but powerful spirit. And then, when he thought he was going to be destroyed by this dark spirit, a light appeared exactly over his head, which was brighter than the noonday sun, quote. Joseph Smith recorded, and this is his quote, when the light rested upon me, I saw two personages whose brightness and glory defy all description standing above me in the air. One of them spoke unto me, calling me by name, and said, pointing to the other, this is my beloved son, hear him. Okay? Now remember, this is the official version found in their scripture, the Pearl of Great Price, and this is what Mormons are taught today. If you join the church in the past 15, 20, 30 years, this is the story of the first vision that you have been taught. All right? The story goes on with Joseph Smith saying in his official version, my object in going to inquire of the Lord was to know which of all sects was right, that I might know which to join. No sooner, therefore, did I get possession of myself so as to be able to speak, than I asked the personages that stood above me in the light, which of all the sects was right. For at this time it never entered my heart that they were all wrong, and which I should join. I was answered that I must join none of them, for they were all wrong, and the personage who addressed me said that all their creeds were an abomination in his sight, that their professors were all corrupt, end quote. All right. In this official account, Joseph Smith mentions his age. He says he was 14, where he was living, Manchester, and that there was a great revival in the area between the religions. He also states that he went to the grove to find out which church was true. Okay, let's start with the basics of this official story and work through these claims as we show the fraud that has been perpetrated upon you relative to the first vision. All right, first, the dating of 1820 when Joseph Smith was a 14-year-old boy. Microfilm records of road repairs prove that the Smiths could not have lived in the area described by Joseph until after April 1822, not when he was 14, but when he was 16. The only recorded and recognized revivals in the area based on newspaper and the church's conversion records occurred between 1824 and 1825 when Joseph would have been 17 years old, not 14. Property assessment records show that a cabin was built on the land that the Smith described between 1822 and 1823 when Joseph was between 16 and 17 years old, again, not 14. Every Mormon has been taught he was a 14-year-old boy. It's impossible based on these that he was 14. Remember, Joseph said that revivals took place 2 years after they moved to Manchester area, which would have made the year 1824 to 1825, and Joseph would have been a minimum of 18 to 19 years of age, not 14. Joseph's brother William, who was one of the original 12 apostles of the church, said that, quote, the revival of the area was led by a Reverend Lane in 1823 when the prophet would have been 17, not 14. So every single thing is pointing to the fact that the 1820 age of 14 and the year 1820 is wrong. Even quoted by Gordon B. Hinckley, who says in 1820, a 14-year-old boy, it is an absolute fraudulent claim. All right? Additionally, church records of the Baptists, the Methodists, and the Presbyterians show a dramatic increase in 1824 as a result of revival from baptisms happening as a result of revival when Joseph was 17 or 18. Nothing was going on in 1820, 1821, or 1822 by way of revival. All right, based on Joseph Smith's age claims versus the substantiated evidence, the story fails the test of authenticity with regard to his age. Even if there had been a first vision, Joseph Smith could not have been 14 years old. He had to have been at least 16 and was more probably 17 when the supposed version was to occur. This becomes very important because when Joseph was 17 years of age, it was 1823. And in 1823, guess what happens then according to church records? That's when the angel Moroni came to him in his bedroom and told him there's a gold plates buried in a hill, 1823. So this is important because you're going to see that most of the early Mormons believed that the first vision was Moroni coming to him when he was 17, because they had no idea of this God the Father and Jesus Christ visiting him. It was reconstructed over time. And the first vision to many Mormons, and I'm going to give you quotes to prove this, believed it was an angel who came to visit Joseph about what church to join, not God and not his son. And you're going to see this, okay? I suggest there is no first vision, and that the actual first vision was actually the event that Joseph said an angel came to his bedroom when he was 17 to tell him where golden plates were buried. But for continuity, let's stay on task relative to Joseph Smith's claims. The first church-sanctioned version of the first vision was published in a magazine or a newspaper called the Times and Season in 1842. Okay, so the first official LDS record of the first vision, meaning God the Father supposedly visiting, was printed 22 years after it happened in 1842. And Joseph said in this official version that he had confided in a minister about the vision and was told that it was the devil. He added, and I quote, listen to this is important. I soon found, however, that my telling the story excited a great deal of prejudice against me among the professors of religion, and was the cause of great persecution, which continued to increase. And though I was an obscure boy, only between 14 and 15 years of age, and my circumstance in life was to make me a boy of no consequence in the world, yet men of high standing would take sufficient to excite the public mind against me and to create a bitter persecution. And this was common among all the sects, all united to persecute me. Now, common to the LDS teachings, and you hear the story when you're a kid, is that Joseph, this poor 14-year-old boy, goes to the grove, he prays, God the Father and Jesus Christ appear to him. He goes to a minister innocently, and he says, this is what happened. The minister says it's of the devil. And then quoting from here, Joseph said, all the ministers united the public against him to persecute him and to attack him. So we have another claim by Joseph Smith, which was provided 22 years after it supposedly occurred. And it was that back in 1820, men of high standing brought about increased persecution, great persecution over time, sufficient to incite the public mind against him to bitter persecution. Guess what? There is no record of any of this from any source saying that a first vision happened from any pastor. It didn't happen from any journal, whether they're Mormon, whether they're Joseph Smith's mother or father or brothers. No one wrote in a journal that Joseph Smith had a vision of God the Father and Jesus Christ at 14 years of age. Nobody recorded that anybody at that age. No autobiography mentions it. No biography mentions it. Where the town and the people and the papers were all over the fact that there was a guy who claimed gold plates were buried, nobody mentions that at 14 or around that age that he sees a vision and that he was persecuted for it. Nobody. Even Joseph Smith's enemies, who were against him from the beginning, never attack him for this supposed first vision. You know why? Because he made it up. He made it up to fit and to go back and make everything make sense doctrinally for the things he was teaching later. And I'm going to show you how that happened. Even the first published Mormon history, corroborated by Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery in 1834, ignored the event altogether. Okay, did you hear that? The first LDS church history ignored mentioning this thing they call the first vision altogether.